Okay, we're starting this relief carving with a piece of white pine. It's 1 1/4 inch thick. I'm laying the pattern so the grain pattern is hitting the top of the curves. To have it go upside down is going to be carving into the grain, but on a piece this large, if it tends to warp, it's going to curve away from the wall. And if it's going to warp at all, I'd rather have it curve a little bit towards the wall so it's not sticking off the sides. I'm going to run 1 1/4 inch border around the outside. So I'm laying out this photograph that I had taken on a rainy Saturday afternoon and blew it up on my computer to about the size I wanted. And the piece that I chose to do this carving with is a charming little spot on a small little pond that I've enjoyed going fishing with my children at. It is an old pump house or boathouse with broken windows and unhinged doors, and it hasn't been used probably in the longest of time. When doing carvings, a lot of times that people have a certain personal connection to their subjects, they're going to enjoy doing the carving that much more. And this has been a spot I've been going to for a number of years and always wanted to do something with this little structure and this little setting. So this seemed to be a perfect opportunity to do that. And we're going to put a couple bushes in also to give it a little more of an overgrown look. Okay, let's take a look and see how it's come out. Make sure we didn't forget anything. We got mostly everything in there. Okay, I want a little bush in here, so I'm going to put a little area here for a... Okay, I'm going to have a pond, and I want a little tree, just for a little accent and a little bit more perspective. So I'm going to leave a nice big mound that we get a nice full tree out of. Okay, so we're going to have an angled off door in here. This is going to be a real deep cut in here. I'm going to have this door off the hinge. This is a kind of a straightforward relief carving. It's a little bit on the traditional side. We shouldn't really have to be spinning this around to get at all kinds of awkward angles and undercutting of leaves and so on. So this should be a little easier to just clamp to the table and work on it this way. I'm going to start outlining this little pump house with the number 12 V tool in the 10mm. And again, staying away from the pencil lines, I'm going to start to recess the background. Now, because this is a structure, your cuts are going to be a lot straighter than we were doing with the fox. And the grain on this piece of wood is going horizontal as opposed to being end cut. So you have to have just as much control so that the tool doesn't want to slide off of the wood or chip it. And we're going to go maybe about 3/4 inch. And this is going to give us some nice depth so we can really utilize a lot of the thickness of this wood. Now I also want to start getting some of the foreground outline and the tree. Because when I start removing the background, I want to make sure I have enough volume for this tree to be nice and full. Okay, I'm going to outline the bush and the area for the stair rails, because these are going to be at a different angle than the house. Now we start removing some background. Because the grain is running horizontal with this carving, I want to make sure I'm not going to go deeper than my outline cuts so that I don't have a chip just come in and splinter off on me. So if I want a little more depth, I'll go back and re-outline it with the V-tool, but I'm going to get rid of some of the stock in the meantime. This is a 7 gouge and a 30mm. The biggest tool possible for the job. You know, a smaller tool, you're going to sit there and spend a lot of time doing a lot of this grunt work, and the sooner you get it done, the sooner you'll stop grunting about it. Okay, I'm coming up towards the other side of the carving. I want to change direction so I don't have this splinter off on me as I'm plowing through this. So I'll come from the opposite direction. And I'm using a scooping, slicing motion with the chisel. As you see, it's going from side to side, and it really devours this background wood. It just makes it melt right away. And I'm being careful to stay away from the line because I'm going to want to blend the carving into the frame. So I don't want to go past my border line. Time for another pass with the V-gouge. This is just major destruction of wood. Okay, a little background removal again. It's a little prying and just pop those chips right out. Okay, we're just finishing up removing the background. I think this is about deep enough. This will give us some nice planes for the sides of the building. Give us some vanishing points. Relief carving, to show the perspective of the building, this ridge right here, this corner, is the farthest out part of the carving, which is going to be here. So that means that this side has to be recessed down towards the background, and this side is also going to be recessed down to the background. So this point in this intersection of the roof and the two sides is going to be the farthest out point, all the way down to our stone foundation that'll be down in here. The easiest way to do this is to outline the windows and then start to angle your sides down so that you don't have to go back and redraw and square up your windows. So what I'm going to do is take a little 15V tool, and I'm going to start to outline the windows. This window will be deeper than this window because this window is closer to the foreground. This is more in the background. And I'm just going to lay the chisel on its side and just take the inside out. Again, sort of being efficient with the tool that you have in your hand, a V-tool laid on its side makes a nice flat gouge. And while you're doing this, you might as well hop over and get the windows on the left side, which this window that's closest to our high point of the corner is not going to be as deep as the unhinged door, which is pushing the door into the house, which is the way I want it anyway. I want this door to look like it's just broken and hanging on by one hinge. And this will create some depth into the carving and somewhat invite you in. So while I have the V-tool, I might as well just outline the eave of the roof. I'm going to start to plane the sides of the building down to more of our diminishing point. This part of the chimney is also on the corresponding angle as the side of the building. So we're going to take this down. We'll start taking the roof down. I'm still leaving all my reference points that I had put in with the V-tool. Okay, now we go from this corner and we start angling down to the background in the center of the carving. I'm careful not to lose my windows. I don't want to undercut past them. Now I'll cut my windows back in so I can go a little deeper. Okay, and this back eave, I'm going to bring this also on a downward angle. Okay, now we're going to do our cellar door by putting a V-tool, and this door really kind of hangs on the hinge also, so I want to come in and make a deep, deep cut here, really bury this tool. And then this is our corner for the stone wall, so we have to angle this back the same direction as we were angling the whole side of the building. Okay, just going to use this gouge to kind of scoop out a little bit more of the door. Now this is where it gets a little tricky. We have the railing for the stoop here. This angle corresponds with this angle, and this angle corresponds with this angle. This angle corresponds with this angle. So we're going to go 1, 2, and 3 different planes. So we'll take this number 3 gouge, 10 millimeter, and I'm going to angle this starting at the post and come down into the side of the house behind the bush. And I'm going to do the same thing with this post, as that's going to come down to the same angle as this one. This is the top of the railing. Then our bush is just going to cover the other side of the railing, so we don't have to worry anything about that. Okay, just going to clean up some of the wood chips so I can see my planes very easily, and I'll have all my little detailing in the proper place when I come to put it in. This will be just a hint of where the stairs will be. But I want this bush to kind of cover over this, so this is really going to take up a major part of the back of this corner. Now we can't have both these posts on the same plane, so we're going to bring these down just a little bit so that this one has the illusion it's sticking out farther than the post behind it. A couple pressure treated 6x6s to hold this little bank up so this bush has a place to grow. And then angle this into the cellar door. And we should have most of the angles for this carving already established now. Okay, I'm going to tighten things up with the V-tool. Use this to delineate some of the major shapes and structures. So I have a little cleaner surface to work with. I'm using the large V-tool to put a back cut behind the peak of the roof, and this is going to create a nice shadow and also a nice separation from the background. Square this up a little. Okay, I'm going to put a slight curve right at the end of the roof just to show a little warping. Again, keeping things from being absolutely too straight. Okay, we'll round the tree off. So I'm not too sure where I'm going to have the branches on the tree go yet, so I'm just going to blend the tree into the background a little softer than having just a delineated branch or tree shape. We'll start laying in the windows and put our shiplap and the shingles on. Okay, I want to measure the windows to make sure I have the proper width and re-pencil in my lines. Okay, I'm squaring up the windows. I'm holding the knife on an angle towards the far wall. I don't want to go straight down. I want to hold it on an angle because this angle has to basically correspond with the angle they have of the side of the house to keep everything kind of true and square. I'm going to create using my detail knife, the inside of the frame of the window. I'm going to do all 4 windows at the same time, so I'm going to angle the right side of each of the window frames and do the bottom sills, and I'll do the left side cut, which is perpendicular, And all 4 windows will have the left side perpendicular. In order for this to look true and on the proper perspective, you'd see the inside of this side of the wall and this side, but you wouldn't see this side. So the angle is going to be basically the angle that I'm having this wall diminish to. Okay, this is a number 1 gouge and about a 6 millimeter, and I'm going to use this to straighten up the inside panes of the windows. So again, we're keeping the proper angle. Okay, when we are taking off the siding of the house and creating our angle, we have some highs and lows, and now that the windows are all cut in, I want to even this all up. So I'm using a number 2 gouge in a 30 millimeter and straighten up some of the walls. Okay, we'll do the other side also. Oops. Now the angle of the right-hand side windows is exposed on all 4 windows. So this one I will angle outward. So you'll see the inside of the wall on the left side instead of the right side. And the right side will be a perpendicular cut. Take our flat gouge and create the panes of the windows. Keeping the angle corresponding with the angle of the side of the house. So it's angling back to the back corner. And I have this door hanging open. We're going to angle it towards the right-hand side of the door frame. With a little number 2 gouge. Try to get that whole little corner right out. And you can go as deep as you want as long as you don't come out the back side. And it gives the illusion the door is open and angling into the interior of the building. Might as well do the door down here also on the bottom of the foundation. And right behind the bush, we're going to make a shadow cut and create the illusion that this door is also off its hinge. And use our little number 2 gouge to pop that little wedge out. Okay, basically we're ready to lay out the stonework for the foundation. And this is just a haphazard of using the V tool to create irregular shaped stones. And you just don't want these to become 2 patterns, so you want to alternate size, shapes. And then I use the side of the V tool to take some of the hard edges off and make the rocks a little rounder and smoother and worn down. Maybe make a little hole where a little raccoon might live. And we'll just continue around the front side of the foundation, keeping the rock line in parallel to the bottom of the house. With the siding, I'm going to go with just about the width of my 16V tool. So I'm going to skip up every width, and this will give me the spacing to the roof line. Keeping in mind there's one little board on the corner here that I want to make sure that I keep in. And then I'm just going to kind of lay this in and just kind of see about how straight it is. Okay, I'm laying this flat on the right-hand side, and I'm going to follow the pencil line. And again, I'm just going to give a few little wobbles so that it's not particularly straight. But I want the far end to diminish slightly. Okay, now I can crispen up the edges of the siding by putting my corner board in, and this is just 2 tight little V-cuts. And to get behind the bush, I'm just going to pick the chisel up on its V and let it slide underneath that back side of the bush. Now I'm going to put the shingling on, and these are going to be done just in the same manner that we had done the siding with. And this I'm making up because the original boathouse has a tin roof on it. And I want to have some old shingles, so I'm going to make these look a little old and tattered. Now I also was talking about putting a hole in the roof. So I'll take my pencil and I'm going to show you how we're going to do this. I'm going to take 2 rows of shingles and I'm going to bend them down. And then this is going to be my hole. I'll use the side of the chisel to create the opening, and also where the end of the existing shingle is. So that we have them somewhat falling into the interior of the roof. The bricks are going to be put in the chimney in the same manner that we put the siding and the shingle lines in. Now we're going to put our individual cuts for the shingles and the separation for the bricks. Now I'm going to tackle the railing on the porch and bring the top of the rail a little bit lower than the posts. And we'll also come behind it and remove some of the wood so that we have a little bit more of the door showing. You know, these are going to be really narrow styles because the perspective is going in another direction. That's what I love about this little knife. This allows me to get into very, very tight spots. The blade is very narrow, so it doesn't create a lot of wedging as I'm going and outlining these little posts. Now we can't put the window in half vertically, so what I'm going to keep the perspective, I offset it just a little bit away from the center, and this is going to aid in the perspective. Before I start doing this real delicate detail work, take a little spot somewhere on the carving that's not very important right now, and just make sure that the tip of your blade is not chewing the wood. In other words, you don't have a little nick or a little rounded off dull spot. Okay, step over to the other top window. Same thing, angling the knife slightly away from the center sash. Put some stop cuts in. Make sure they meet at the corners. And
just a little relieving. Let's round over the bushes. This is a number 11 gouge and a 10 millimeter. I'm going to start to just round off the top. You don't want this looking patterned. What I'm doing is creating a few little lumps and bumps to kind of simulate the unevenness of a shrub. I mean, this in itself is fine if you want to leave the bush just like that, just with a couple little tool marks. It gives you the illusion of some sort of foliage. But I'm going to take a smaller gouge, my number 11 and a 4 millimeter, and make this just a little more detailed. Now we're going to tackle our tree. I'll take the 15 V tool and the 6 millimeter and start to create the curves of some of the main branches. Because the tree takes up a lot of area of this relief carving, we want to have as much interest in it. It's a major focal point of the relief carving and should be treated with as much attention as the boathouse. So I'm going to take a little time to kind of create a lot of interest in this tree. Now I'll take the 11 gouge and a 4 millimeter, and I'm going to start to create just some texturing to kind of show the foliage of this tree. So what I try to do is keep this very haphazard, and almost the sloppier you make these cuts, not surface wise but directional wise, the better result you're going to get. There's a lot of cutting edge on this tool, even though it's a small little tool, so I'm utilizing the whole edge of the tool to create the chip. And what I'm using is just the whole cutting capability of the tool as opposed to just a small fraction of it. And the grass is going to kind of hide the root area. And we're just going to texture this and make this somewhat of a little grassy knoll. I'm going to use the 11 gouge and the 10 millimeter, and I'm going to create just whispery kind of cuts on the grass to simulate not a well-kept lawn, but it's certainly not overgrown to the height that's going to hide a car. I'm going to look at it in the light and see if I see any flat spots that retain the planer blade markings. And every here and there, I'm going to put a weed. And these are just curved little lines, short. I'm going to put the line in to simulate the far shore of the pond. We're going to have some kind of a green field going into maybe just a few hints of mountains with the V-tool, just to give a little more added depth, and we're going to finish texturing. Now I want to smooth out the background on the... Okay, I'm just making very, very thin cuts with this gouge. And the direction again is going in the same angular direction that I put the other grass. And because these mountains are at a closer distance than I guess the skyline, I just want to make a cut to bring the level of the background just slightly underneath where the mountains are, and it'll soften up this V cut. Now these are just finished cuts I'm putting in to blend some of these more distinctive cuts and soften them up so that there's sort of a continuity of the cuts. And again, different surface texturing. And just for fun, if you want, way up in here, put a couple little birds. There. And we're going to call it done.